อต้อนรับแขกผู้มีเกียรติทุกท่าน โดยในช่วงนี้นะคะเราจะได้รับฟังการเสวนาของวิทยากรพิเศษจากภาครัฐและภาคธุรกิจระดับภูมิภาคในหัวข้อ Shaping the Future of ASEAN Economic Community Looking Towards 2025 ดำเนินการเสวนาโดยคุณสุทธิชัยหยุ่นผู้ก่อตั้งบริษัท Nation Multimedia Group ขอเรียนเชิญคุณสุทธิชัยหยุ่นบนเวทีค่ะและขอเรียนเชิญวิทยากรผู้ทรงเกียรติทุกท่านเช่นกันค่ะ
Welcome back to the AEC Business Forum. For this session, our honorable speakers will share their visions of ASEAN for the next 10 years under the topic Shaping the Future of ASEAN Economic Community Looking Towards 2025. Please welcome the moderator of this session, Mr. Suthichai Yun. And please welcome all of our speakers once again, Mr. Thomas Lambong.Professor Dr. Ong Thun Tet, Dr. Robert Yap, Mr. Stanley Kang, please. และขอเสียงปรบมือต้อนรับทุกท่านด้วยค่ะ
และจากนี้
Go ahead.
และจากนี้ดิฉันขอมอบเวทีดำเนินการเสวนาให้กับท่านผู้ดำเนินการเสวนาคุณสุทธิชัยหยุ่นค่ะ
Thank you. Welcome to this morning's panel discussion on, I think it's called CEO Vision. And we are supposed to talk about 2025, 10 years from now, which I think is a bit ambitious, considering the fast changes taking place everywhere in the world. I would like to make a less ambitious forecast. 3 weeks from now, there will be a new leader in the United States. Who do you think is better for ASEAN? Robert?
Robert. Okay, yeah. Why do you pick me for US? Anyway, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I don't know. I think if you would like to have fun, right? Fun, I think Trump would be a good leader to have.
Right.
Fun doesn't mean a good thing. It can also be the other side. Right? It's a bit of risky because we don't know exactly where it's coming from.
Right.
But I think for ASEAN, it'll be good if the status quo continue. Of course, I think Mrs. Clinton will actually be a better choice.
So continuity.
Yeah. Continuity, yeah. But if you want something very drastic and all that, maybe very good or very bad, then I think Trump will be a good bet, and he might win. You know, I mean, we all
might
sure
win.
That he might
you
win.
Still think? What if he wins? What will happen to ASEAN?
It depends what. If you look at the campaign, right? So drawing back, trying to ensure that America is strong again, which means that a lot of the manufacturing would actually flow back. So is that going to be good for ASEAN or not good for ASEAN? Yes and no, because I personally feel that ASEAN or Asia itself is already a growing region, right? So with the growth in region and Asia century, I think we should not be overly dependent, right? Just on the U.S. market, right? Even though it does have a very strong impact, but that may strengthen ASEAN to actually move faster together. I mean, it's not necessarily a bad thing, but it all depends because all this when they come out and talk for elections or that kind of thing, I don't think 100% of whatever they say is going to be implemented. So I think this is something that we need to watch. Yeah.
So both Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump don't like the idea of TPP. How does that impact on ASEAN?
Well, I see.
In fact, any idea of a free trade area is rejected in the campaign speeches anyway.
Yeah, but I feel that I'm actually more supporting in the way that we are looking at RCEP itself, right? But you know, all this trade pact and how we actually get together as a region is more in execution than the theoretical part of it. I think if we are all very open and we work together, we should actually get our first act together, which is AEC, right? Even AEC is in place. I think AEC, we have ASEAN plus 3, ASEAN plus 6, ASEAN with the rest of the world. But if we actually make sure that ASEAN, right, as a community itself really work, all of us inclusively grow, right? Good corporate citizens like Bangkok Bank, right? If we have more companies like that, I think ASEAN will be having a very bright future.
Tom? You think a woman should win or a man should win?
Kun Sutichai, as a member of the cabinet of the government of Indonesia, I'm probably a little bit circumscribed in what I can and
you
cannot
can be
say.
on personal capacity today.
There's no such thing.
We won't tell anybody what you say.
That's right. He says with a dozen cameras pointing at me. But I think a couple of things. First, it's probably worth us considering what will happen after the US election in November, regardless who wins, right? What are the lessons from this election cycle in the United States and other developments around the world, such as Brexit? Number two, since you touch on TPP and RCEP and trade agreements, and the general theme in recent elections, which are very against free trade, very against trade agreements. I would like to point out that in even recent surveys, majorities of survey respondents are still supportive of free trade, even in the United States, even in Europe. So the people who are protesting free trade are a vocal minority. Nevertheless, and this takes me back to the lessons of the US election, the lessons of Brexit, we cannot be complacent about these very vocal groups in the West, which feel that they have been left behind, right? Which feel that globalization and free trade have been bad for them, right? Never mind the facts. Perception is reality, right? And I think we all in this room probably understand that the biggest beneficiaries of globalization and free trade over the last 20, 30 years has been the developing countries. It has been all of us here, including in ASEAN, right? So if this globalization is under threat, then our welfare is under threat, right? And therefore, the problem that we have in the United States, the problem that we have in Western Europe, and other Western societies, where there's this outcry, where there is these disaffected groups, that is our problem also. We cannot simply treat it as, well, that's their domestic mess, right? Or that's
and you
their
don't
domestic.
think it is domestic? You think it would spread to international relations?
I do believe that it will have an impact. Already, it is having an impact on current efforts such as the TPP or the transatlantic equivalent, the TTIP. Politicians and technocrats are having to backpedal, right? But I don't know that that's the correct response. I don't think that's what the disaffected groups actually want. They want us to pay more attention to them. They want us to open our ears wide and listen to them, right? I'm not sure that necessarily they want us to go backwards on economic progress and economic development, right? But we have to find a way, and I'm sorry to, I hate to use this very overused word, to make our economic programs more inclusive, right? But I think, I have to admit, we as technocrats, as business elites, tend to be very fact-based, but very numbers-based, right? But I would like to suggest that feelings matter. Feelings matter.
Perceptions, feelings.
Perception is reality.
Sentiment.
Feelings matter. And I would go as far as to say that maybe it is worth it to slow down for a while and take the time that is needed, put in the effort that is needed to engage with those groups who feel that they have been left behind. To cite that famous African saying, if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together. So I think, again, touching on the word used earlier by Kun Supachai,
Yep.
I think togetherness really is important, right? We cannot continue to barrel ahead. We cannot continue to force forward motion if at the same time we have a growing group of people that is very disillusioned, very upset, very angry. And by the way, right now, we may think we are blessed in ASEAN to not have such groups.
No.
But believe me, if we continue like this in 12 to 18 years, we will. We will, right? Continued progress, continued growth, continued modernization in ASEAN will create a new generation of mega billionaires, will create a new generation of elites, enormous amounts of wealth, and potentially a angry, upset underclass, very much like we see today in the West.
You mean the gap will expand?
Unless we take action now, right, to make people feel that they're being listened to make people feel that they're being heard, right, that they are part of us. Right?
Dr. Ong, does it make any difference who the next president is in the United States?
I think it does, especially when you, and I'm sure everyone in the room knows about the lifting of the US sanctions by President Obama on Myanmar. Now, this has really been a game changer, that for the first time since about 25 years, we've been under the harshest sanction regime. And the fact that President Obama is brave enough. And this is where I think the political miracle that Myanmar achieved. For us now, the opportunity is how do we turn it into an economic miracle. So, of course, because I think the former Director General mentioned about the globalized world, we cannot live in isolation. So what the impact of the elections would be felt one way or the other. But I think for the group and for AEC and ASEAN, I'm less concerned because we have certain things which are different. We have the Asian values. The Asian values of most of us, many of us are Buddhists here. The Asian values of metta, compassion. I think these would somehow be able to minimize the differences. And I hope we go back, revisit the ASEAN values, because it is something different and I think quite unique. If I may, the integration, the cohesiveness, the whole issue of competitiveness, innovation, dynamism, the values that our leaders, when formulating the ASEAN vision of 2025, I think it's still very relevant. And I hope we can focus on this rather than on something that's going to happen one way or the other because of...
But for Myanmar, the stake is big because Hillary Clinton was very much involved in helping Myanmar getting out of the old regime.
She was instrumental.
You think Donald Trump knows where Myanmar is?
If you have a quiz, I'm not sure whether he would, but...
or does he care? I mean, I haven't heard him mention ASEAN in the past two debates so far. Have you heard him say ASEAN, mention ASEAN in any way?
Even Asia.
Or Asia.
So that is... But I hope we can, as all of us in the region, we know the impact that the US does have. But at the same time, if we follow what was the advice given by the former speaker, togetherness, that together, because we often forget that ASEAN has a market of 600 million. It's projected that by 2030, we would have a combined GDP of about 8 trillion, which is even bigger than Japan. So if you take this into account, collectively, the 10, 11 countries can be a force in the world.
So we're important enough for any leader in Washington to have to
look
take note.
Take note of what the ASEAN people are feeling, what the AEC, the community is thinking about. So we can punch above our weight, because if we get together, if we are united. My worry is that, when I look at the vision, it talks about competition. I feel that the word should be co-creation.
Co-creation.
How can we co-create together among the 10 countries? Because the challenge is to make the pie bigger and not to get the bigger slice. That's my worry, that if we are competing amongst ourselves rather than making the pie bigger, because if the pie goes bigger, then it benefits all of us in the ASEAN region.
Stanley, your friends, business friends in Bangkok, when they talk about the US election, what is the tendency?
Yeah, I think we look at it. The world are changing very fast. And US election is a long process. And of course, we respect the choice of Americans. But of course, during the election process, they need to have a strategy. Because whoever not be elected, they don't talk about the future. But I believe that whoever be elected in the future, right, they have to see the American interest. Right now, their strategy is how to make sure that they win the support from American in the country, right, so they can win the election. But after whoever win the election, right, Americans is still one of the strong power and strong economic leadership in part of the world. And anyone who be elected the end of this year, they have to make sure that the American interest. But how can they make sure that they get the American interest? Also, they can share the prosperity and the interest with the global partner. So we look at two parts. Right? One part in the process, what will be the strategy? They win the election. Everybody looking at it today, and very soon we'll get the answer.
Yeah.
But whoever get the leadership there, and they got to face in the future 4 years, right? How they going to do? So they can have the possible to continue for 2 terms of the presidency. I think whoever be the leader, they got to have the new strategy to lead the Americans and to cooperate with the international policy and market. And because today, many parts are very strong, especially on Asia. The rising of Asia is not just today. We can see in the last 20 years, Asia are continue rising. And that's one of the things that Americans are looking at it. Right? They don't want to be disappear in Asia. So either Trump or Clinton comes up, they have to have the new strategy, how they to be back in Asia or partnership with Asia. Otherwise, I don't think they will have opportunity to get the second term of the.
But Donald Trump is a businessman. So business people in Asia should like him more than Hillary Clinton. At least they should think that Donald Trump would understand what their problems are more than Hillary Clinton, a politician.
Honestly, this is a very difficult choice, even for Americans. So you look at...
If you were American, how are you going to vote?
My American told me that it's struggling. So you see that no one knows what's going to happen in the next 1 month. And this the election in the previous time to today is very tight. And I'm sorry that they don't have the third choice. But currently, out of these 2 choices, even the Americans are very difficult. So for us, I think we still leave the hand for the Americans. But once they have the leadership comes out, then we see how to cooperate and how to deal with all the problems.
Robert, despite what the election results will be in on November 8th, how should AEC or ASEAN in general work together to make sure, as Dr. Ong said, that we are influential enough, important enough for anyone who win the election will have to take note of us. How do we do it? Are we strong? Are we at that point now or not? And if not, what else should we do?
Yeah, I think that's a very important thing that we all have to do is actually to look at how we can connect ASEAN together, right? So I think the question of connectivity in terms of how we really work together as a region. This is something that I come from, I belong to the ASEAN Business Advisory Council, actually since the inception, so 12 years ago. And I've been there, the older serving. And every year, we meet up with the leaders to look at how we can actually give perspective for the business community, what business community is thinking. Right? But you see the gradual growth of interest. The business community in the beginning was not really very much into it. So it's ASEAN, but everybody don't believe it's going to happen. You know, that the kind of skepticism. So, but as you go generally, as you move along, then you see actually that we are able to more rally some of the businesses, and the businesses today are getting a good feel of what AEC could bring, and then looking at ways in which they can position themselves to take advantage of this growing community. So I think we are actually on the right track, even though it's not as fast as we would like, especially for the business sector.
Do you think business people in ASEAN do have a role now?
Definitely, very important. Just to give you an example, for example, we started in the AEC after giving a lot of critique on policy, lobbying for certain policy that are friendly to business. Right, we feel that that is not enough. We feel that we have to do something. Right? So as a council, collectively, we actually push legacy projects. Legacy project in terms of like last year, or this year actually, we pushed the Laos Legacy Project. Right? The whole idea of making Laos from a landlocked to a land link kind of a part with the rest of ASEAN. So we have mentioned about inclusive growth and so on. I think it's very important that we need to look at where are the pockets, right, of disconnect in ASEAN, and how we can really collectively do to bring it up so that we all grow together as a region, right? So the tide grows, everybody win, right? On that basis, that's how we have to actually work on that.
Have you identified those areas where things need to be done?
Yeah, I think you look at Laos. Actually, it's actually in the center between connectivity, China-ASEAN, right? So from a road perspective, right, we're actually building what we call the Laos Connect. Right? In terms of using Laos as an interchange for trucks and even rail coming in through China, put it into the interchange of Laos as an ASEAN hub, and then feed the rest. Okay,
and
so that's
through Thailand, Nong Khai, Bangkok,
and vice versa
to Malaysia, Singapore, all the way.
Correct. So instead of everything moving directly, we look at a hub and spoke concept, and then try to build the interchange up. But that calls for a lot of things. That's called for the ASEAN single window.
Yes.
Right? You cannot pass border and start to declare everything, and that's very inefficient. That's what it is today. And then that calls for also a kind of a single equipment. Right? We have been talking about this for a long time, right?
Yeah.
Now you see trucks cannot come into different area. Malaysian truck can go into Singapore. Singapore cannot go into Malaysia. You have Thailand truck getting into Malaysia.
Yeah.
So all this kind of a transportation license, which is actually done for the right reason, I believe, because to protect basically their domestic.
What about an ASEAN passport? Everyone
ASEAN
carries an ASEAN passport. No, not possible.
I don't think that is really necessary.
No,
right? Just the ASEAN passport, the ASEAN currency. Those are things that are more for form rather than substance.
Yeah.
In a way. But if we recognize all of us, I mean, today we have ASEAN channel. If we realize that we have ASEAN channel, so we can go to ASEAN channel and then we clear, which is actually working in a way.
In every ASEAN country now, you have the immigration, they have an ASEAN channel.
Yes,
in
there's
Jakarta?
a way in place.
Yeah.
I've seen that in many.
We do. I think it's combined with the APEC channel.
APEC is different. APEC is a little bit more in terms of a APEC card, right? So we've been actually lobbying for an ASEAN card. ASEAN travel card, so we all can recognize each other.
But you see,
I feel that
this is what the
AEC,
businessmen are suggesting.
right?
But the bureaucrats, technocrats, still want to control power.
I know.
What will happen if suddenly anyone can come and go, just,
Yep.
and paying no attention to all these officials, uniformed officials sitting there? So they feel they would lose control.
Right.
How do you explain that, Tom?
Right. Well, Sufficiency, the way I explain it to my fellow bureaucrats
Fellow bureaucrats.
is with digitization. Basically, as our economies develop, more of our economy will be in the services sector, right? And services can be delivered over the internet, right? And never mind us, being able to regulate what's happening on the internet. We will not even know that it's happening.
Right.
Right? So if you're talking about us, the bureaucrats and regulators losing control, I would actually argue that that is already happening as we speak.
Yeah.
Because
already,
of digitization, because of the internet, right? I like to give the example of a English language tutor sitting in Spain, giving English language lesson to a customer in Indonesia using Skype video.
Yep.
And that Indonesian customer then sends money to the tutor in Spain. And technically there would be an export or an import of a service.
Right.
Right? So it's an export. It's an export from Spain and import from Indonesia. But never mind imposing export duty or import duty or putting taxes on it. We don't even know it's happening. Right?
What? They can pay. This student can pay by mobile phone.
By mobile phone, by PayPal, by credit card, or by later on, Kun Supachai mentioned Alibaba, right, later on via Alipay. And governments, unless we deregulate, unless we harmonize standards, unless we make it so simple and easy, and in fact even pleasant to be in the formal sector, right? To be in the offline world, and even online to be in the formal sector, like our very own people, the societies around us will abandon us and move online into the informal sector. So I would argue that that is what is at stake, right? If we don't keep up, if we don't harmonize standards, do create ASEAN-wide standards, cut down on paperwork, cut down on requirements, open up, and show a very friendly face to our customers, our clients, our societies, right, our businesses. They will simply move online and abandon us. We won't even know what they're doing online, right? Because it can even be encrypted in the future, right? So we can't even look in, and people will just do it without us.
I think that currently we all have to face the true things that the globally changing very fast due to the technology, right? And technology changing all our life and changing all the way of communication. So even on the private sector, we talk about 3.0, all the automation. And today we talk about 4.0, all the big data, intelligent production, how you go into it. A lot of private sector companies become the e-company, but we're waiting a lot of public sector become the e-government. So then you can link it together. And we believe in the openness because the information goes out so fast today. Even the media people are changing all the behavior and the SOP. Even the banking are facing the challenges from the fintech. So that's all technology, not just with the bank, with the media, also with the private sector, all the manufacturing, and also with the service. So you see the Alibaba comes up, right? So with all the new things start up, is the true things. So the connectivity is very important, not just on the hardware, also on the software. That's come out with the competitiveness. So we believe that the people talking about, a lot of people are going to lose jobs. At the same time, we need to train a lot of new people to adapt to the new job. Or the current people how to adapt to the new job to see the competitiveness there. So we can see that a lot of things will be changing very fast. And this trend, no one can stop it. Because whoever try to stop it, to make a barrier, they will turn to somewhere else. You see, China is a lot of restriction in the past. Currently in the region, they go very fast because they are very central power. They don't have to ask for too much opinion. As long as they think it's right, it goes. So that's what we see. And that's our neighboring country. That's why sometimes I have very strong point on the COMV. Maybe they go very fast because they are start from 0 to 10, to 100. And we are in the 50, 80, how we reach it to the hundreds. So to forget whatever our behavior in the past, compared with the start from zero. Sometimes from zero is much faster. So how we investment on people to make sure that in Asia we'll have our own technology, and how we apply with that. Like Uber, like Airbnb, all these things won't happen in the last 10 years. And a lot of big giants like Motorola, Nokia, and they just disappear. So what will be the next who's going to disappear?
So digitalization of ASEAN, is that a threat or is that an opportunity, Dr. Ah?
I still want to pursue the issue of the ASEAN or AEC making a difference. We often think very commercial. Of course, this is where we are. But I feel that ASEAN can take leadership. For example, in the SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals. Whenever we're talking about even the vision that we had was only 2025. The SDG now allow us to look little 5 years ahead of.
Right.
We now have the 2030.
2030.
So the 17 SDGs, and as the Director General was mentioning, the whole issue of how do we get the SDGs on board, especially on trade. I think that would be important. There's other areas where, with our Asian values, we can be ahead of even the global community. Let me give you an example. On the 29th last month, Mr. Ban Ki-moon came to Myanmar to attend the peace conference. But in addition to attending the peace conference, he was there to honor the group in Myanmar, which is doing what is known as the UN Global Compact. The UN Global Compact is the largest CSR initiative in the world. It has 4 pillars: human rights, labor standards, environment, and anti-corruption. Now, I'm so proud that in Myanmar we have 335 companies. We are number 1 in the region. But if, rather than talking of each country, if collectively, if AEC and ASEAN countries get together and ensure that we practice responsible business, we will be a force in the world for good. Because oftentimes, business people see only as profit. We can see beyond profit. So I think ASEAN can take the lead in such areas. Another point which was not sort of mentioned. See, in addition, when you talk about the American politics, the ASEAN nations also is between the 2 economic giants, the One Belt, One Road, China, and look east and act east, India. We must, whatever we are thinking in the future, must focus our attention to how can we capitalize on this.
So we must look east and west.
At both. This is what we can do. And that therefore...
And up.
Of course. We always pray. But I really feel that the geopolitics that was mentioned should be really seriously considered. Because we have a unique location that we can build upon. And especially using the 2 giants as a pivot. And then the ASEAN can really grow. But we will grow differently, because the whole issue of what is happening in the West, in the US and in Brexit in Europe, growth was not inclusive.
Right.
It leads to income inequalities. So the question is, how can we show leadership as a group in ASEAN, that we can have growth which is more equitable. We can have growth which is more inclusive. This is a challenge for all the leadership in ASEAN, rather than just following what the West has adopted.
This is to preempt what Tom just said about the income gap that would stir
we
up
must do something different.
bad feelings. Robert, you were trying to say something.
I just wanted to actually get back to, you see, the new economy, I think provides an opportunity rather than a threat. I think ASEAN being what we are, if we know how to actually take advantage, right, and position ourselves correctly in terms of e-commerce policies, right, in terms of the way that we look at how this data thing can be actually be used for big data purpose so that we can further optimize all the things that we're doing. If that can happen, I think it actually will be a good advantage for ASEAN. You look at China itself, right? If China has not got this kind of a new economy thing, it will not have moved so fast. Its consumption engine, no matter how it crank, will not be able to proliferate the way that it is happening now. It's because of the e-commerce. You see the Alibabas, the WeChats, and the Tencent technology that owns WeChat and so on. See the way they have grown, right? And then how the Chinese economy has been able to take advantage of those engines and grow together. And now they're coming out. They're coming out. So if you look at how we should play, I think in ASEAN, if we take advantage also of the OBOR, right, that's Sitata, or the Chinese call him Sitata, it's President Xi Jinping. Right. So it's amazing. I mean, the way that he has actually rallied, right, in terms of OBOR, and they are very, very serious about it. We should be able to take advantage of that. We should benefit from that because the OBOR a lot crosses through the ASEAN borders at the same time. So if we're able to ride on that and then look at how we put good infrastructure, right, take advantage of the AIIBs and all the kind of developmental financing that we can get, and build infrastructure to connect ASEAN with China. And the next stage, through Myanmar, for example, we can connect to India quite easily. I'm talking about the land, right? Then you create a kind of an intermodal land, rail, sea, and air link. I think we will have a lot to play. We have a lot to play for the next 1, 2, 3 decades. Because these are something that I thought we should be able to position ourselves correctly.
Integration of
then we can move forward.
Construction. And what? Yeah, please.
Sorry, can I just add on to the comments of my fellow panelists? I think I want to take the moment to emphasize how important is this Asian values, which Professor Ted just mentioned. And if I can link this back to Honorable Kun Supichai's story about His Majesty King Bhumibol, right? And if I can just highlight one aspect from this morning's speech, namely sufficiency, right? I have this wonderful little anecdote, and it is of a father escorting his daughter to her wedding. And after the wedding, of course, everybody is very happy and moved. And the father says to his daughter, I wish you enough.
Enough.
Enough. That's what I wish you. I don't wish you all the happiness in the world. I don't wish you success. I don't wish you wealth and all these things. And I think, again, I would tie this back to Professor Ted's comment and Kun Supichai's story of King Bhumibol. I think we need to go back to these values. We need to go back to these time-proven, timeless values, right? Moderation, sufficiency. And I agree with Professor Ted when he says we don't have to copy other models of development or capitalism. What I could call the maximalist model, where basically maximize profit, maximize growth, maximize wealth. I don't think that that is a healthy model. So tying that to your question on digitization and the digital economy.
But before you go to that question, how do you reconcile the self-sufficiency enough with the obsession with GDP growth?
So first of all, I need to draw an important distinction between self-sufficiency and sufficiency. Nobody can ever be self-sufficient. We are all interconnected and we all need each other, right? So I think togetherness, again, across countries, across regions, across the world is a reality. But sufficiency, I mean, look, we want a certain level of prosperity, we want a certain quality of life, but beyond that, maybe, low growth rates are okay, right? We need to focus more on the quality of our growth than on the quantity of our growth.
Slow growth rate that is sustainable, better than high growth rate that
I think, one theme which I'm starting to roll out in my agency, the investment coordinating agency, is that the numbers don't tell the whole story, right? I could go after investments that are in the billions and tens of billions of dollars, and that would probably mean a big focus on oil and gas or mining and natural resources, because investment there is in the billions and in the tens of billions. But you know something? I think we should humanize investment. I think, I value even a $25,000 investment in new coffee processing machinery for remote villages in the mountains that grow, very valuable Arabica coffee, but, that are working with bad machinery. And if just a modest investment can multiply the income of these coffee farmers, to me, that's a worthwhile investment. So I think, again, I think we have still an opportunity for a wiser, a healthier model of growth. And again, I think it's very opportune, albeit at this tragic moment of mourning, that perhaps we remind ourselves of the values that King Bhumibol stood for, right? Moderation, sufficiency, not the, loud, maximalist, head for the moon at all costs model. But again, I think we're onto something if we're.
How would the ASEAN Business Forum take this? Businessmen, when you talk about sufficiency, will say, what does it mean? We need to do, maximize the profit. That is, our shareholders demand that. Yeah, Stanley?
I think with the enterprise, when we look at it, we have two duties there. There are two mountains to climb in our corporation. First will be, of course, you have investors. You make sure that they get the reasonable right dividends back and take care of your employee. At the same time, we all get from the society. We have to have much more higher compliance. How should we contribute to society? So then you can be sustainability. And then we can talk about hundreds of years of management and how can you do it. So a lot of things coming with the new investment. I say the new investment coming to ASEAN should not looking for the cheaper labor, right? You should look at the better compliance. So you have become a better company. You can attract the better people. So just now in front we talk about technology and all the speeding coming up. And a lot of those things will be replaced by machinery or robot, right? But this trend is that which company can attract more talented people there. I think that globally a lot of countries are trying to finding more talented people into their nation. And by education, their own people, or bringing the better talent people into the region to make sure the competitiveness is there. And all these things are doing, I have to emphasize again, the compliance of the company, the company should be high standard right now. Next 5 years, 10 years, we talk about 10 years. In the next 10 years, what should be the behavior and the SOP and the standard of the people in your company, in your nation? And then your competitiveness will be there. Otherwise, it will be very difficult.
I feel that all of us who are leaders of industry, should do our part in terms of growing company responsibly, right? Providing good employment, partnering lower end of the value chain and bring everybody up. I'm not just saying it, I'm actually practicing it, right? My company is YCH Group. We are a logistics company. We're all over Asia. And the way that we go in, right, we do last mile. We do both the online and offline trade, right? So we do fulfillment for online companies, offline companies. At the end of the day, how you actually execute, how you actually make your money, I think is important, right? We try to make money in a way that everybody grow together. How do we do that? Actually, when we enter a country to invest, we look at the lowest end of the value chain. My father started as a single lorry transport operator. So I can relate that. So we don't go into every economy and try to build our own fleet on that basis. We try to partner the SMEs. Right? In Indonesia, I have 30 over partners. Right? I distribute susu Mandera, which is the #1 milk product throughout the whole of Indonesia. I use about 1,500 trucks every day. But these are all work on our last mile partners. We call them last mile partners. We treat them like extended family. We bring them up. So, but a lot of the competition they do it will be different. They will actually go in and they will acquire, they will own the entire value chain, right? We choose to work that way on the partnership. We choose that way to, or what we call inclusive growth. We grow together with our partners. And we do that model not just in Indonesia, we do that in everywhere. In Vietnam, in India, and even in China. So this is kind of a way that I think for leaders to look at how we can grow. We can still grow our business, right? Very, very well. But at the same time, we are trying to, at the same time, bring up people at the lower end of the value chain together, so as we grow in a very inclusive manner. I think this is kind of a responsibility, but I'm still private.
Yes.
Which means that I call the shot.
Yeah.
But if I'm a public company, if the shareholders are on top of me, maybe the maximization of profit become the prime factor. So this is something that we actually have to play around with. Exactly, do you want to maximize profit, or you want to actually have very much a kind of a balanced growth, a growth that is sustainable, a growth that you bring people along, and that's more satisfying. Yeah.
This new idea of doing well by doing good is taking roots, right?
Exactly.
I think it's not, people frame it as a dichotomy, that if you are focusing on doing well, which means earning profit, return on investment, share value increasing, that you cannot do good. That's the old thinking, the old paradigm. The new paradigm is you can do both. You can do well as a company, but you can also do good. Right. So the whole issue now is, I think, on corporate boards, and I think in the BOD of Bangkok Bank too, is to look at what is now called the stakeholder concept. That you look beyond the narrow shareholder perspective. That if you look at the community as a whole, then your company, your business is not there just for the sake and the benefit of your shareholders, much wider. Now let me go back to your earlier point. I'm an economist. This is a confession.
Confession.
We have been a confession. No, so
something bad.
I'm not proud to be an economist. But we in the classrooms, in the universities, we have what is now known as the GDP fetish.
Yeah.
That the countries grow if per capita income grows. But thanks to the UN, in 1990, we have an alternative paradigm, which is the human development paradigm, which was done by the most renowned economists in the world. People like Professor Amartya Sen, who got together and came up with an alternative view of development, which we now have, which is the HDI, which is combining GDP, which we cannot ignore, but also looking at education and health. Now, thanks to, of course, His Majesty, but thanks also to His Majesty of Bhutan, who developed what is now called the gross national happiness, that the country prospers not because of income alone, but much broader. So now the UN has accepted gross national happiness as an alternative measure to GDP. Now come back again to the MDGs. Oftentimes we forget. The MDGs was an alternative scheme to look at development in a much wider, the 8th dimension. Now for the first time in 2015, we have the SDGs. In the SDGs, there was one goal which is called responsible consumption and production. What we need, I think, in ASEAN, this is where I think we need visionary leaders in ASEAN who would take the global agenda like the SDG, who would take the global agenda like UN Global Compact and demonstrate to the world that the ASEAN people can do it, that we can show that we can achieve sustainable development goals based on the values that we have, rather than looking for the West or others to take the lead. So I think the chance is that the vision of 2025, which I think is the focus of our discussion, is to take leadership. And we need brave leaders in ASEAN who look beyond profit, who look beyond immediate short-term benefits, and have a better vision of a different ASEAN that we look, where we have more inclusive, where we have more, I think Bangkok Bank is promoting what is called the inclusive financing, where we bring in the bottom of the pyramid people into the financial services. So I do hope we can provide the ASEAN solution to the world's problem. That rather than the world giving us the solution, we would provide the solutions to the global world.
Is there a common SDG stand for ASEAN now? governments, private sectors?
Yeah, we now have, in fact, next, on Sunday, I'm doing a big national seminar on not just PPP, but people-centered PPP. Because oftentimes we use private-public partnership as a panacea. What we are missing, the people dimension. The same thing with connectivity. We talk about the hard connectivity, but we forget about the soft connectivity. How do we get the people together and to talk about what was mentioned, raising awareness? How can we do this? That will be critical for us.
Yeah. Tom,
Yes.
what needs to be done
So it's
before
funny.
2025?
So, my personal view is actually that the solution is right in front of us. It's staring us in the face, and that is our children, our younger brothers and sisters, our younger cousins. I look around this room, I guess most of us are in our 40s, 50s. I see a few people in their 20s maybe,
You
30s.
make the old people very happy.
But, I think the key phrase that was mentioned just now by Kun Stanley is the war for talent, right? In business and industry and even in government going forward, it's all about talent. And I believe that today's young people will not really want to work for a company that doesn't care.
Yep.
Won't really want to work for a political leader or a government that doesn't care, right? I would probably hesitate to join the cabinet if it were not for President Jokowi's incredible moral leadership. I think when we talk about leadership, for many of us, there's this management phrase, which is a lot of times to be a good leader, you have to be a good follower, right? And for me, it now becomes a question of following the lead of our young people, right? On the internet, nobody cares how rich you are, right? People care how many likes your post gets.
That's right.
People care how many friends you have, and that is usually not a function of how much money you have or how gaudy of a lifestyle you have. It is for some people,
Right.
but most people in the world know that that's not attainable. That's just an obsession for a small elite, and frankly, most of the world is more interested in really cool video games, in really inspiring stories that make you cry, in extraordinary sense of humor that makes you laugh, and that's what gets you friends on Facebook, likes on Twitter, and so on. And so I think in a way, our young people are already showing the way forward, right? They're showing what they care about, and they don't care about wealth and gaudy lifestyle. They actually care about helping each other, about community, about
Togetherness.
togetherness, yes, community, togetherness. That's why I would say, back to your earlier question, digitization and the digital economy is an opportunity or a threat. I would say it is an opportunity for now, as long as we all together bring to it the timeless values which people such as King Bhumibol and others stood for, right? I feel a lot of times, and this is a theme, an undercurrent to Professor Ted's comments, that we lose our way, right? As we westernize, and as you can tell from my very American accent, I'm very westernized, right? But in fact, I would even go as far as to say these are not really Asian values, right? These are human values. If you go back to the United States of the 1940s, 1950s, or even earlier during the Great Depression of the 1930s, you have neighbors helping each other out, right? When one neighbor loses her or his job, the other neighbors come to their help, right? They collect firewood together, they babysit each other's kids together. So there is this bedrock of social values, which I believe is still there. But again, there is always this risk This is this theme of temptation, which features so prominently in virtually every major religion, right? The temptation of going fast, the temptation of going far, right? The temptation of veering off the course. So again, I think what the populist outcry, and again back to your theme at the very beginning of this panel, the elections in the United States and the very loud, nasty political rhetoric in many places around the world. I don't think the answer is to bow to those bullies. No. I think the answer is to go back to our old, maybe a little old-fashioned values, which I believe are timeless, and ironically, are very young, are leading the way. In social media, on the internet.
Robert, let's come to individual countries. How do you see your own country moving forward in terms of ASEAN? Singapore being the financial center of ASEAN, Singapore talks about one belt, one road, expansion of ASEAN and Singapore in the logistics hub. How do you see Singapore going forward from now?
Well, you know that we do feel that the economy is slowing down a little bit, right? But Singapore now is actually transforming. We are trying to transform all the fabric of the economy that we are. Obviously, the connectivity and the hub thing is still a very major portion for us. So we want to be able to connect ASEAN to the rest of the world. Right? So, and it is something that we have been looking in. Singapore has a very strong port, right? So we have an airport, we have a seaport, and we have very good kind of a connectivity to the rest of the world. So the way that we are going to play is really in looking at how we can connect up to the rest of ASEAN together, and then look at how we can then all get connected, right, with the global stage. In that aspect that, but Singapore companies like my own company, for example, we have been really all going out. Our market is too small. So when we look at the market, we don't look at Singapore. We look at the market, we look at ASEAN. We look at Asia, we look at the world, right? So this is how we actually progress on that basis. So ASEAN is a very natural neighbor for us, and we are a member of ASEAN, and we are also very close to China, India, and so on. So for Singapore companies, for Singapore economy itself, our play is really in looking at how all these three economies can work very close together, right? And then how we can be a major contributor to doing that. So obviously, the financial sector is one sector that we are moving very strongly. The other sector that we are actually going in is really the e-commerce side, the new economy, right? Because I think in that area we find that size is not a restriction, right? So you're looking at how we can actually create connectivity, how we can create information highway, how we are actually one of the biggest data centers now actually in this part of the world. And at the same time, we are actually pushing a lot in analytics to help to look at trends, right? Trends to keep pointing in the right direction so that we all can move together in the right direction rather than in the wrong direction, so that we can be more efficient as we compete with the rest of the world. So these are the kind of a new thing that we're doing. We're also doing our part in terms of creating a process in which that we build the training and education, right? And see how we can actually move it out to ASEAN at the same time, to help creating what we call job-based training, practitioner-based training, rather than academic training. Right? Everybody wants to do academic. Everybody wants to be a graduate with a degree here and there. But then at the end of the day, there can be only so many jobs for graduates. There could also be, to me, I think for myself, I would rather hire somebody who comes from a working track, right? And then comes in, and then through lifelong learning and continuous learning, build that part of the career path for them, rather than somebody who just jump up from the university. Because I feel that that kind of a development, I think, is very important, and we are trying to do our part in actually building that, right? To see how we can use skills-based training and all that to try to build up so that the talent, right, in ASEAN can be harnessed so that we can grow together. So for Singapore, we are very optimistic, right? We think ASEAN as a platform is going to be a very interesting community as we grow to 2025. If we know how to play ourselves within China and India, there will be a lot for ASEAN to play, right? And together with the rest of the world, I think we should have a lot of good things for us to actually move forward, right?
With financial technology
Yeah, fintech. Yeah.
so overwhelming, don't you think Singapore may face the threat of its role being financial center threatened?
Yes and no, because we are also actually regular. So today, I think we have come up with what we call the regulatory sandbox.
Yes,
right?
sandbox,
So instead
yeah.
of allowing the regulation to stifle fintech take off, we allow fintech to play within certain sandbox, right? So allow it to do it, test it properly, and then scale it.
Right.
So that part I think is very interesting. We are trying to do that. And when we scale, it's not just about in Singapore. We can scale in ASEAN, we can scale anywhere. So the idea is to incubate innovation, right? Set up an environment for innovation to happen, and then look at how we can take it through and everybody gain. Right? So this is how we are playing in that area. I think that's an area which even in the government, Singapore government is a bit more very governance and all that, right? So you think that this will not work, right? So, but somehow we've been able to navigate in such a way that we create a kind of a sandbox concept and say, okay, take this out, right? Outside the box, right? Try and allow this to happen. Right? That's where innovation can flourish. Right? And then from there, we think that it is right, take it through. So I think this is something that I find we are moving in the right direction. And
in a way, it's quite scary though, because you never know what will happen.
I know, that's what it is.
In the
you look
next
at
2 or 3
China.
years. Not to mention 2025, the next 2 or 3 years, you cannot even forecast what will happen to technology, right? And Singapore, having played the role of being the broker, the middleman.
Right.
Some expert in digital economy told me that if your business is the middleman, forget it. You're going to lose your business.
Correct.
Because technology will allow the consumers and the producers to connect directly without going through the middleman.
Exactly. So we have changed that tag. We don't like to be called middleman anymore. I mean, over the last 1-2 decades, we have actually been moving on what we call value added, right?
Yeah.
But today we are actually even changing that. We are looking at value creation. Right?
Yeah.
So we are creating value, right? And then looking at how to share. And that's what the new concept is all about. And in order to do that, we are trying to leverage on the data analytics,
Yes.
right? Fintech is one big area. We're trying to also leverage on the kind of a people that we have. We have nothing. We only have human resources. And we're also trying to leverage on, over the years, we have actually built a very strong coffers, right? We are actually quite wealthy in a way. So we are using that in the right places to be able, like our GICs, our sovereign wealth funds are going around, investing in correct areas, in areas that are not just purely for profit, but also in a way to look at how we can take everybody up together with us. So I think that's all a positive thing, right? Positive thing for Singapore.
One belt, one road is good for Singapore.
Definitely, definitely. But good and bad, I think I like to use this word good and bad because there are always two sides to the coin, right?
Yeah.
We have also been challenged. If we build this connectivity, right, through China and all the way down by road, then a lot of traffic can actually bypass Singapore.
Would
Right?
not.
Because it come in, it can go out to the
Will
rest
not
of the world.
pass through Singapore.
Because today a lot of it come through our airport, they come to our seaport to be able to connect to the world.
Yeah, that may disappear.
Yeah, so I have been arguing with some of the skeptics to say that actually it is not, because we are trying to raise the tide, right? Because certain product, based on optimization, I'm a supply chain guy, so I think to me optimization is the key, right? It's not about flying, it's not about by sea, it's not about by road, it's about the optimal way of doing, exploiting what we call intermodal, right? Transportation or freight. Right? So if companies can do that, your product obviously as a whole become more competitive, right? You're faster to market, cheaper to market, and that's what we are talking about. So you're creating the options, and the options will be many and varied, and then you need a lot of what we call data analytics, right? To predict trends, to see how we can actually position inventory in the right place for the right markets. Yeah.
Since you are a logistics man, what happens if Thailand builds the Grat Canal?
Sorry?
The Grat Canal. The Grat Canal.
Oh, it's okay, we'll be there actually. To us, I mean, you see,
do you welcome it?
I already mentioned that, for us, our market in Singapore is not, we are now a connect, but we could move up and spread our wings. We could looking at, before it was a different track, right? We try to say everything, try to come up with this physical connect. Yes. But if there's a possibility and it happens and it's good for world trade, we will also be involved in looking at what's the optimal way of doing it, right? And then we'll find our role to be able to play that. So this is how we have been thinking.
Well, I'm sure Singaporeans know how to adapt because they've been very good. I have no doubt about that. I'm just trying to learn from you so that the audience here would learn from Singapore.
You just try to provoke.
Myanmar, Dr. Ong, you have the new Dawai Special Economic Zone, you have the Tivala port and the new airport. Myanmar is really building up infrastructure. What is the roadmap from now?
Let me start with we being a latecomer. In terms of other ASEAN countries, we've been cut off from the world for the past 26 years. Only in the last 5 years, we started reconnecting. So we are learning many lessons learned. We have best practices. So how can we not copy what was done wrong in other countries which went into transition?
Learn from Thailand.
So that's the first thing. Well, not only Thailand, China too. Well, other countries, Vietnam, etc. Of course, talking about the way, it's not just the Singaporeans who should be worried. You should be worried too, the Thais. Because through the way you can get to Kanchanaburi, and then from there to Sihanoukville, and from there to Da Nang.
Right.
So we're not talking about special economic zone, we're talking about corridors. The corridors between the Indian Ocean and Pacific Ocean.
Right.
So I think we are now in a race between Kra and Dawei.
We are in a race
I
between
hope,
Kra. Wow,
because
that's a
we
great
are
story.
also relying on the Thai investors.
Yeah.
But one thing that I would like to share, because we are a latecomer, we are very careful about investors coming in. We want to make sure that it is socially responsible investment. Because in the past, as was said by the minister, many of the investments comes into oil, gas, mining, timber, etc. We are saying no. We will not accept investment at all costs. We would create, we want to make sure that the investment does benefit the majority of the people. Now, the other issue is that we are the only ASEAN country that borders India and China.
Right.
That is something that you have to accept. That if you want to go to India or China, you have to go through us, because this is where we are. So,
is it a good thing or bad thing?
I'm not sure, but we are not a middleman, but we are a middle country, right in the middle.
You have to go through us, right?
But the question now is, how do we rebrand Myanmar? When you talk about Donald Trump not knowing Myanmar, I think the whole world doesn't know Myanmar until Aung San Suu Kyi. Now we have a brand, which is a global brand. If you talk about Myanmar, everyone knows Myanmar. Everyone wants to invest in Myanmar. But I would like to come back to what our distinguished speaker mentioned. This is the millennials. ASEAN is very fortunate that we still have in many ASEAN countries the demographic window. In our country, 40% of the people are under 30. We need to capitalize on them. The question then is, I invited Professor Yunus, the Nobel laureate, who came, and he said, we must change the young from job seekers to job givers. Because currently, people graduating out of universities or schools think of finding employment in companies rather than setting up their own. So the whole challenge for the ASEAN community, as was mentioned, is how do we encourage entrepreneurship? That people, the young people, would not need to go into the labor market, which is saturated anyway, but make sure that they have their own little businesses, using the connectivity, the digitalization revolution that we have. So we are making sure that we in Myanmar, we would like to adopt what is called the Make in Myanmar, like Make in India. Because at the moment, as you know, because of the sanctions, many of the garments that we produce cannot be labeled as made in Myanmar. Many of the fish that we sell in Europe and US cannot be labeled as made in Myanmar. It has to be made in some other country. So the question now is that in addition to the geopolitical nature that was mentioned by the Honorable Speaker, I think the political economy is very important. So I do hope, because we're coming to the end of the forum, that the ASEAN can see not only as an economic community, a very narrow focus on economic affairs, but much broader, that ASEAN is not just the ASEAN economic community. It is a community of nations with values. It is a community of young people. So we really need to focus on the community angle, because oftentimes with AEC, I feel too much emphasis is on the E and not enough on the C.
Culture.
Community.
Community.
AEC is very careful, very clear. ASEAN economic community. But everyone talks about as a trade bloc, that's not the case. We are a community of nations, a community of people, a community of cultures. So if we can encourage this, then we would really be different from other such like communities like the EU, etc.
As Kun Supachai said, there is not enough awareness of ASEAN. We still don't call people here ASEANites or ASEANer. Not yet, right? Not like in Europe, European. They have this word, European. So how do we make every young person in ASEAN say, I'm an ASEANer, right?
That is the challenge.
Right. Tom, the new government in Indonesia, the policy on foreign investments. Over there, Myanmar say we want socially responsible investors. What is the roadmap for Indonesia on inviting foreign investors?
Right. I think it's not only about international investment, even though a lot of it is about that, of course. It's also about domestic investment. And frankly, where we are is, at the moment, we have way too much red tape. We have way too much bureaucracy. Our president has inventorized all of our rules and regulations and come up with about 14,000 rules and regulations. 14,000, right?
We may have more here, though.
Well, I think it's a common problem around the world, in countries rich and poor. And actually, to Professor Ted's question, how do we encourage young people to start up new businesses or become entrepreneurs? It's very simple. Right now, it's extremely painful to do so. The amount of paperwork, the amount of requirements, the amount of permits and licenses you have to fill out, and then the official harassment that you have to tolerate. Paying your taxes can be quite painful. So the Jokowi administration is very focused on the nuts and bolts of this, right? Making it simpler, easier, less time-consuming, friendlier to comply.
Is it happening?
I would say we've achieved a lot in the first 2 years of President Jokowi's 5-year term. Even so, I think if you measure that against the president's ambitions for our country, we're probably only 5 to 10% into our reform effort, right? So I think the bulk of it is still ahead of us, which I think is good news for investors, both domestic and foreign, right? I'm personally at the most optimistic that I've been since President Jokowi took office 2 years ago. I think we're finally on the right path, and I forecast a acceleration in reforms going forward. And really, I want to congratulate Bangkok Bank organizers and Kun Supachai. I think his keynote speech really touches on the key issue in my mind, and that is reform, right? On many occasions, President Jokowi in his speeches has already said you can almost divide, he says you can almost divide the emerging markets into two groups. Those that want to reform and those that don't want to reform, right? And he said, I can guarantee you that Indonesia is reforming and we want to reform. Actually, you could expand that. You can almost divide companies into those companies that want to reform and those countries that don't want to reform, right? Or applies to rich countries as well. So reform, I think, is the key. I think to tie it back to some of the other themes, I think while we're at it, let's go the whole hog. Let's go right straight to values-based reforms, right? Actually, Kun Sutichai, you made fun of Singapore as a middleman and a broker. Frankly, I actually think...
No, I said it with great respect. No, really.
Your body language says otherwise. I'm kidding. No, but actually, in this rapidly changing world, I would say that there's more demand than ever for an honest broker, right? It will eventually be about trust. It will be about credibility. And I sincerely believe where the millennials, where our young people are leading us, is it will be about values. I just want to close with a couple of cool stories. A couple of years ago, we all sustained another sad loss, and that is the passing of the great statesman of Singapore, Lee Kuan Yew. So it happens to be that my wife and kids, my family moved to Singapore from Jakarta around 2009. So we're sort of watching this unfold, and the lines of people queuing to pay their final respects to Prime Minister Lee, and the outpouring, right? And there was this interview on TV. This journalist asked, actually, Prime Minister Lee Kuan Yew was quite a difficult person, right? He was quite arrogant, quite tough, quite merciless, very disciplinarian.
Dictatorial.
Sorry?
Dictatorial.
Dictatorial, right? Like, and this may have been a Western journalist asking, how come this outpouring of love and affection? And this legislator, I believe a member of parliament, just said, well, if you think about it, it's really simple. It's only one thing. He cared. That's all it is. He just bloody cared.
Yeah.
Right? And, again, I think when you ask, what will it take for our next generation to proudly say, I'm an ASEANer, right? I think even today, the reason anywhere around the world people even know ASEAN would be great statesmen like Lee Kuan Yew, like King Bhumibol, like Mrs. Aung San Suu Kyi. I think great moral leaders like that have probably done as much or more than anyone in ASEAN to really put ASEAN on the global map, to create that ASEAN brand that we can all be proud of. And again, I think it behooves us, bureaucrats, technocrats, business leaders, I think to follow our young in that direction, to really build up brands that are moral in nature, to really lead with our values, with our wisdom. And I think that is the antidote to the nasty politics which we're witnessing in many parts around the world.
Yep. As chairman of BKPM, Tom, can you give some specific ideas of the desirable investments in Indonesia? Some of the businessmen may are interested in investing in Indonesia. What specifically should they look at?
So I think one thing that's very difficult, both as a policymaker and as an investor, and I spent my entire career in investment banking and investment management, right, is you have to make policy and make investments on a forward-looking basis, right? I think a lot of people still make the mistake of thinking that the world will be like today, right? You make investments based on historical research or based on the world today, and the world 10, 15, 20 years from now will be completely different from what it is today. I'll give you a few examples. I just returned from Australia, and when I was trade minister before this, I officially launched a process to get a free trade agreement between Indonesia and Australia. And Australia and Indonesia are both countries that suffered, that first benefited tremendously from the commodities boom, and both suffered tremendously when the commodities boom collapsed, right? Now, Trade Minister Steve Chiobo of Australia and I like to joke, well, for us right now, it's very easy to imagine oil and gas giants. It's very easy for us to imagine mining giants. And now, we can also imagine technology giants like Apple, Google. We don't yet imagine like culinary giants, right? Or fashion giant.
No.
That sounds weird,
Not
right?
yet, yeah.
Fashion giant. Culinary giant.
Food giant, no.
Yeah. But again, I think what I would urge all of us to do is to really, maximize, so not capitalism, but maximize imagination, right? We really need imagination to imagine a world where it is about fashions, it is about culinary, it is about video games, right? It is about, lifestyle. And that over time includes, for example, tourism and travel, right? Which I think is one of the noblest industries potentially, right? People traveling the world, encountering and understanding other cultures, forming an appreciation for the natural beauty that we then develop a love and a need for protection, from having touched it, from having seen it. The people to people, and I think in Southeast Asia, as some of my other panelists, have touched on, we're blessed with a very young demographic in much of Southeast Asia, ASEAN, that is hugely complementary to the rapidly aging demographic in North Asia, right? Japan, famously, but also Korea, Taiwan, and of course, the big one, China. So I believe rapidly aging demographics in North Asia combined with continued rapid increases in income will mean a lot of pensioners, a lot of retirees, a lot of newly middle class and upper middle class tourists coming. So I think the sectors of the future are more in that direction. So actually, I can give some happy confirmation to Professor Ted's assertion that the government of Myanmar is very hesitant about natural resources investment. I would agree that probably those are not the job-creating sectors of the future. We'll still need them. We still need timber, we still need copper and nickel and so on. And we need to work on those in a pragmatic fashion. But I think to generate the excitement among our people, among investors, I think we should focus a fair bit on things like tourism, lifestyle industries, and again, this is where our young people are leading us anyway.
Stanley, Thailand and ASEAN, from the businessman viewpoint.
I think just now we have clearly see, Robert, the Singaporean attitude. So I want to share with all my Thai friends, we look at Singaporean attitude. With the ASEAN country, they are one of the very small area, but they have the global mind, broad mind. Singapore never think that they are in Singapore. They are everywhere now. And same, ASEAN, when we 10 countries together, we all believe together is stronger and we for more opportunity there. But based that, we got to have open mind. So I always tell my Thai friends, we got to be open society. Don't worry about open. Only when open, you have create the opportunity there. Like we're doing all this infrastructure, East-West corridor, or all the connectivity, aviation, port, and road, and railway. What for? Connecting people, connecting goods. So I can see the ASEAN in the next 10 years, see the progress will be three things happen. First, free movement of goods. Right now, everybody talking, take out the barrier. And when we create other barrier, like Dr. Spachai say, I don't know, but I hope not to see that with this ASEAN country. And then we can see the free movement of people, right? Can we, I remember once I see Dr. Sturing tell me that you are Thai, can you be part of ASEAN citizen? Well, this kind of thing happening the next 10 years. We got to all work together to see that thing happen. And by the free movement of goods, free movement of people, and I think all the financial people see here, you can see that free movement money, how we move the money around. And when all these things, this kind of thing are moving, connectivity, and become open mind. And when Thailand had to meet more investment in Indonesia, in Myanmar, and even in Singapore, and creating more jobs there, people can go there. And when you walk out, and people come in, and those kind of culture exchange, and create new things there. And I will see the continuous with all the sovereignty there. So I believe that Thailand, we have go into the aging society. Average age right now, I see that 38. But it's good for us because we have all experience. How we use experience to work together with our neighboring country. They have very strong young force there. And to make sure the integration and all the supply chain and can work it out, all the opportunity are win-win together. And then we can create a strong area, ASEAN community. Otherwise, we're going to face all the big giants like US, like China, and like our friend Myanmar, they have two big giants next to them, right? Either to China, how to connect to China, how to connect to India. Right? That's a lot of opportunity there. And I believe that all the things comes down with the mindset. We have to change the mind, accept the change. Because today you don't change, the world will change you.
You mean the Thai businessmen don't have enough of a global outlook? Are you complaining that your Thai business friends are happy only at home?
Honestly, we have said that Thailand, God bless Thailand. We are always in the comfort zone for many, many years.
Yeah.
Right? To facing the global challenging global competition, we have to open not just for people to come in, we have to go out too. Right? You see China too. When in the last 15, 20 years, they attract all the foreign direct investment into China. What happened today? If their people don't go out, right?
Thai people don't go out.
No, if their people don't go out, do you think that they can just be...
Why? Why don't Thai people
go out?
It's a mindset.
You see, I always say...
What kind of mindset is it?
I just want to show that still some saying in Thailand that we say, oh, the big company can go out. The SME go out, they will sink and die. I don't believe it.
Really?
Originally, I come from Taiwan, I come with nothing. Okay? Singaporean, small, they go everywhere. So I don't believe that. It's a mindset. As long as you're willing to face the challenge, you go out, you'll get it. I told some of my friends, if today your second generation is 20 years old, put them into Myanmar. You look after 10 years, what's going to happen?
Yeah.
Just like 36 years old when I come to Thailand. So there's a lot of opportunity. But Thailand must be bigger than Thailand. You cannot just stay inside here. And otherwise, when you build up all the connectivity, right? What's the meaning for building all the connectivity? Means in and out. Right? So we look at, in the US, we look at Silicon Valley. You go there, you see all the people from different where. So Thailand today is good. One thing that we have very strong tourism. So when we have over 30 million people visit, 30 million people visit Thailand, that's kind of culture exchange. That kind of things, opportunity to learn from each other. It's always a momentum and the power to pushing up, to move forward for that.
Yeah.
Right? But today, can all this connectivity with ASEAN to bring this kind of momentum even bigger and bigger. We look at our friend Thomas, when Indonesia, when they talk about something, they have 25 million people, right? Much bigger, 250 million people.
250 now.
Yeah, 250 million people. That's a big population, right?
Robert,
but my
very
friend,
interesting point that Stanley makes. It is a well-known story among business owners here that if you call up one of your promising officers and say, I'm going to send you to a branch in Singapore. This is a big promotion. You can take your family. You're going to get a salary raise. Oh, no. Oh, thank you. No, please, keep me here. If it happens in Singapore, I'm sure that guy would jump and say, thank you for this promotion. Is it true, Stanley?
Example I told you. We have operation in Indonesia, in Vietnam, in Cambodia, in Thailand. And everybody likes to come to Thailand. This is a comfort zone. But the really challenging place will be Indonesia. But you know that how success that we've done in Indonesia. All my people there speak Indonesian. Right? So they speak the same language. The operation here, we have people from Malaysia, we have people from Singapore. You see this kind of mixed culture, right? The competitiveness, when the global brand, when the big buyer come, they look at you different. I can honestly to show you that today is that how good you are, how good you do. Sometimes based on the first impression, your presentation to your customer, already make the decision that are you going to have the future. They don't even have to go to see your operation. You can see that because the world are changing, more transparency. I believe in the future, when fintech comes up, I don't have to go to the bank to ask the bank, say that how much loan you're going to give to me and how much credit I will have. They will just have the put information in the computer and they tell you that Stanley, how much you worth it. Right? Everybody's account has what you did.
Peer lending will
Yes,
will take
because
over.
that kind of technology, I think that any businessman you go in there, right now you need people to study, analyze. In the future, maybe the computer doing faster than us.
Yeah.
That's what the world going to change the next 10 years. So I want to make sure that all our friends here understand. Even my operation, we try to move in from the automation, become the intelligent-driven production, right? And whatever you want, we be customer. In the past, it's like communists. You have to wear size S, M, L, XL, no choice, right? But in the future, all this kind of production become intelligentized. They can custom make by you, and with the similar cost. You see, that's the world changing.
My last question, please answer in very brief 2 sentences. What are some of the main important crucial factors that will affect ASEAN in the next 10 years, both positive and negative? You want to start, Stanley? What are some of the crucial factors?
I think with 10 nations,
What should we be worried about?
I still believe on the communication. Right? So I'm very happy to see our current Thai government are quite aggressive to play the role in ASEAN because attitude, communication. If we don't have the heart, we don't have the right attitude, and we don't communicate, we don't work on it, things will not happen. So I hope to see that ASEAN will not just be a word, a sentence. We have to put in implementation, take action. I have mentioned just now, we can see the free movement of product, I'm not worried too much. But on the ASEAN agreement on the free movement of people and the free movement and the money and a lot of service liberalization part are quite slow. We are behind. So we got to catch up on that.
Robert?
Yeah, I think the danger is more in terms of the political leadership, right? Because we have 10 countries. So political leadership is one of the major things that will slow down because you need the kind of unity. But if there is something that we can manage, right, politically sensible leadership is there, I think there's opportunity for us to grow as a community is huge, right? If you look at the diversity, all of us have different diversity, which is a big thing. Once you are connected, right, everybody does his own part and put it together, I think it will be very unbeatable. So I still feel a very bullish thing, but we need to actually be cognizant of the political leadership, to ensure that we remain connected as a community, that we remain actually connected to open up so that we can actually gradually move our people forward. I think that's an important part.
Dr. Ong.
You know, when, as you know, Myanmar was accepted as a member of ASEAN not so long ago. So we were very grateful for the original 6 for accepting us and treating us as an equal partner. Because that really started to change, that we were isolated, but thanks to ASEAN accepting us. And now we are part of the ASEAN community. And I think with Aung San Suu Kyi being in the leadership position, even the Prime Minister of Singapore requested her to take a global leadership and not only a regional leadership. So I think we are very optimistic about our role. But because this is my final second, I also want to make a sales pitch. Because I was told that many of you are thinking of investing in Myanmar. So I would like to quote the poem by Tagore, which was the Nobel laureate. He said, "You cannot cross the ocean by staring at the water." So please, Thai companies, don't stare at the water. Just jump in and invest in Myanmar. Thank you very much.
All right. Tom?
If I have to pick 2 things which will be critical for ASEAN in the next 10 years, I would say, technology and values, right? I think technology is changing everything, but there again, we have to be careful that we use technology rather than technology uses us. Now, to me, it's important that we educate everyone, right, including the lower income, the middle income, all age groups, right? We need to make sure that everyone participates in this technology, right? Because as many academic studies have shown, technology can lead to a winner-takes-all outcome, right? So it's a two-edged sword. I think technology can be a powerful tool, or it can turn our societies upside down, right? And I think making sure everyone participates down to the lowest income levels, to the oldest age cohorts, to the youngest, right? And that's where I think the values comes in, right? We have to care. Our children demand that we care. Our younger siblings demand that we care. Our cousins demand that we care, right? So let us be good leaders and follow their demands. And I think once you care, then everything falls into place. And again, I agree with some of our fellow speakers and panelists. The outbreaks of nasty politics or populism around the world potentially do present an opportunity to ASEAN to provide moral leadership. And again, I think it's very opportune timing. I would once again point to the great Lee Kuan Yew, the great Majesty King Bhumibol, and Aung San Suu Kyi, and I have no doubt that there will be many others. But altogether, as business leaders, as political leaders, as policymakers, we can support those who would bring society these timeless and positive values. And I think that's how we build a truly wonderful brand for ASEAN in the world.
So as Dr. Ong said, if you want to cross the ocean, don't just look at the water, jump in. And with that, I conclude this morning's session. And give a big hand to all our panelists, please.
And to you.
ขอบคุณท่านวิทยากรทุกท่านค่ะสำหรับข้อมูลและมุมมองดีๆที่มอบให้กับพวกเราในวันนี้นะคะพร้อมกันนี้ขอเชิญคุณชาติสิริโสพลพานิชให้เกียรติมอบของที่ระลึกและถ่ายภาพร่วมกันบนเวทีค่ะ
Thank you very much for the informative and insightful session. Please stay on the stage and may I invite Mr. Chasili to come up on the stage to give our honorable speakers presents and take photo together with Mr. Thomas Lambong, Professor Dr. Ong Tun Tet, Dr. Robert Yap, Mr. Stanley Kang, and Mr. Sutichai Yun.
เดี๋ยวเชิญถ่ายภาพหมู่ร่วมกันบนเวทีค่ะ
และดิฉันขอพักกิจกรรมช่วงเช้าไว้เพียงเท่านี้เพื่อให้ทุกท่านรับประทานอาหารกลางวันโดยในช่วงบ่ายจะเป็นการเสวนาในหัวข้อ CEO Vision Meeting the Challenges and Capturing the Opportunities of AEC 2025